All right, everybody, I'm going to get started, and a few others will join us, I'm sure. Let me introduce myself. I'm Susan Collins. I work here at TheDream.Us, and thank you so much for being here. If you joined us last month for our first Dream Act advocacy session, you know we're building a monthly series focused on one thing, making sure you have the tools you need to be effective advocates. As I mentioned last month, I spent years in Congress and I saw firsthand how people's lived experiences and personal stories motivated legislators to take action and improve our laws and policies. That's why you, our beautiful scholars and alumni, are our most powerful advocates because you have a compelling story to tell. Today, we'll walk through a simple narrative exercise to help you develop your own story to use for advocacy in ways that feel authentic, safe, and impactful. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to jump right in to the next slide, Chris. First, I want to thank our speakers, Gabby Pacheco, our president and CEO, and Dr. Hain Lee, our master of question and answers, and also my colleagues, Nicole, Chris, and Vernisa, who are working behind the scenes to make this happen. Let me walk through the agenda very quickly, which is on slide 3. Okay, great. So we're going to go over why storytelling matters in advocacy and how stories move people. We'll walk through, with your participation, a 5-step framework you can use. We'll share some videos that kind of demonstrate how all of this work and talk about how to do this safely and flexibly. Couple of things. Please, if you have questions, we will have a Q&A period later in the session. Please use the question and answer box. The chat is for everything else, including the 5-step framework exercises that we're going to be doing. So remember, Q&A for questions. And we'll go to the next slide. All right, first, a couple of things I want to talk about. Before we get to talking about sharing stories, I want to focus on safety and flexibility. First of all, there's a lot of flexibility in how you tell your story. You can be fully public and on camera and all over the news, or completely anonymous, or even somewhere in between. Your story can be told by your friends and allies. So you don't even have to be the one telling your story necessarily to have an impact. And we know this experience because at the Dream.Us, we're telling your stories daily in our work. With regard to safety, storytelling, especially in advocacy, should never be done alone or without intention. This means letting trusted people you know if and how you're sharing your story, thinking about possible impacts on yourself, your family, people at work, etc. And remember, you always get to decide what feels right for you. So community comes first. There's no expectation here that anyone put themselves at risk to make change. Next slide. Um, so your story makes a difference through many different ways. Virtual meetings with elected officials, telling your friends, teachers, and employers something about you, using graphic-based visuals, like not even having to use your photo. And folks often set up advocacy-only social media accounts that protect their identities. Other ways to share, like through calls, letters, op-eds, or letters to the editors, and even in print interviews with a reporter where you share only your first name or an alias. At the end of the day, in any of these settings, your voice still matters. And now I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leader, Gabby.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. I want to just say thank you for being here. Thank you if you're just here because you're curious, or thank you because you're here because you are ready to start using your voice and start putting your story out there to make change happen. And so I want to just tell you a little bit about me and my story and how I accidentally started telling my story because I felt somebody needed to help me. I was a high schooler. I didn't know any of the terminology. I had no background. I didn't even do speech and debate, but I had this desire in me to get help. I wanted to go to college. And so I started telling my story to other people. And it was a really powerful moment in my life because when I was telling the teachers and my classmates and the people around me, right, that I didn't have papers, I was sin papeles, right? There was no terminology. Nobody was using illegal, undocumented, or even dreamer, right? It was just, I don't have papers. Um, People started coming to me and sharing their own story and asking me to help them figure out a way to go to school. I don't want to make this very long story because it's been 20 years since that, a little bit more than 20 years to be honest. But me sharing my story has not only been able to help me be where I am today, has not only been able to help my family come out of the shadows and finally be able to have status, has not only helped us be able to create the program that we know as DACA, but fun thing. So this was 2012. My sister registered my husband and I in a radio contest. And part of the radio contest was getting people to vote for us on social media. The 20 couples with the most amount of votes got to go in front of some judges and tell their story. And as soon as I learned that that was going to happen, I said, I'm going to win. And I'm going to win because I am a storyteller by nature, right? I've been telling my story as an immigrant in this country. And yes, we did win. We won a $35,000 wedding and had this beautiful wedding on the beach. There's pictures somewhere online. But why do I tell you this? I tell you this because it really works. Connecting with people through your stories makes change happen. And storytelling is the oldest form of connection that human beings have since we were on this earth. Before there was written language, before there was even, you know, books and stuff, people connected with each other around a fireplace and told stories. And generations to generations were telling stories about their roots, where they came from, who they were, right? And that's all this is. It is us owning our power, not letting the media, politicians, other people say who we are, and using that not as this, oh, I'm a sad immigrant. I don't have these things because that's not who we are. We are powerful human beings with dreams and desires and rights and things that we deserve, right, to be able to have. And that if we express those things and tell our stories, we're going to be able to connect to be able to make change happen. And I'm not saying this in a way that like is fluffy and stuff. I've seen it happen, right? I won this $35,000 wedding by being able to very elaborately, my husband and I tell our story of how we fell in love, right? And we had pretty big competition, but again, I had been telling my story when that happened, for over a decade. But I want to share with you a video of one of the colleagues and friends to the Dream.Us for an organization called Aliento, and they're in Arizona. And he is going to give us a little bit of a testimony before we actually start the session that talks about the power of dreamers and individuals who are affected by an issue sharing their story. So we'll share this now.
Hi, this is Jose Patiño with Aliento. I'm here to talk a little bit about Prop 308 and also how dreamers sharing their stories help. One of the main ways that dreamers sharing their stories help was put a face on the issue. It humanized the issue from being a political debate about border security or public benefits into no, this is human beings who have worked really hard, who want to pursue higher education, who want to be able to fulfill not only their dreams but their parents' dreams. We were able to cut through all that noise and be able to focus and center the policy on actual human beings. The second part is that because dreamers were courageous enough to actually share the stories, we were able to actually engage and motivate other individuals who had similar experiences, them growing up being undocumented, or they have friends who are undocumented, or at some point in time, extended family members who are undocumented, and they also were called to join because now they put somebody in a face to it. Additionally, many people didn't know that a lot of the folks that were coming out as undocumented students, they were undocumented, so they were like, oh my God, this is happening, I want to do something. And lastly is that because Dreamers were able to share the stories, not only in private events or public events at universities or colleges, but also on ads, TV ads that we could share not only on social media, but also on network television, that was able to put a face to it. So where people were voting for 308, they weren't voting for a specific policy that was written. They were voting for human beings and people. And that's something that only through storytelling, through you being vulnerable and courageous, that you can actually get to. So that's the importance and that's the importance of storytelling and being able to humanize the issue. So I hope that you'll feel the courage like I did 20 years ago to come out and as undocumented. And I hope that you all continue to do so. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So I want you to understand, and we're going to repeat a lot of this, right? Because it takes a lot of courage to do what we're asking you to do, right? To share something that is so intimate that in this moment in time, there's so much at risk. But when I did the walk from Miami to Washington, D.C., asking President Obama to give us deferred action and give DACA, right, and pass immigration reform, pass the DREAM Act, and all these things, right? Felipe Matos, who was one of the other people walking, we got asked, like, you're walking from Miami to Washington, D.C., wearing black shirts that say undocumented. Aren't you risking yourself being detained and being deported? And he said, our lives are already at so much risk that we cannot risk staying silent anymore. And so for us at TheDream.Us, we're doing everything in our power to ensure that every single one of you is able to fulfill your dream of going to college. But the risk of you not being able to put that degree to use, the risk of you and your families being detained, the risk of what we are seeing that is happening in our country is just so great that we can no longer stay silent, and we can no longer say we're not going to fight for a systemic change to ensure that we get legislation like the DREAM Act. So for us, your story is not just a story, it is personal. And we want to be able to shift hearts and mind and the culture and ultimately policy. And today we're going to learn how to do that, how to tell stories that move people. And we're not going to move the people who are to the far right, who don't want us to this country, right? We're going to move the people who are sitting at home watching this debate and feeling uncomfortable by it, but are not uncomfortable enough that they're not going to take action. We're going to help those people take action. And this is what is called moving, right? The middle. That's who we want. And we also want to move our allies and friends who are with us, but haven't done anything just yet. We want to activate those voices because we know how powerful they are. So, from our teachers, professors, the students, the people that we go to church with, right? Those people have power along with us, and they're not going to move until we are good. So, all right, Susan's telling me, move on, Gabby. So, why your story matters. Your story is not just personal, it shifts hearts. We need to speak to the middle. Next slide. The next one. I think this is the one that was in. Yeah. So people trust lived experiences more than politics, right? And people are moved by the values they recognize, experiences they relate to, and the human stories, not the political arguments. So what we are saying is we use our data, we use what is reality of the economics and all the things, right, that we know are important to our country and immigrants are. But we also know that without the people who are affected and without them at the table having a conversation and saying this is what we need, that's a big missing piece. It's like a three-legged table. It's not going to work. It's not going to stay up. So this is why it's really important that all of you are part of this. Next slide. All right. So there are 5 principles of telling a powerful story. The first is that you lead with culture, not politics. We do not care about if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. That's not what this is at play. What we want to talk about is you, your food, your family, your culture, right? Your dreams. That is more powerful than starting and talking with policy. And it is important because you make things relatable to them, right? You help people see themselves in you. And you also don't want to just talk about the limitations. Again, you are more than your status. And when people see you as human beings, as a daughter, as a friend, right, as an athlete, as a computer scientist, whatever it is, right? Um, People are more prone to psychologically to listen to you than if you talk about your pain and you talk about the issues, right, and the barriers that you have in front of you. A lot of people, when you start doing that, and you probably do this too, when you hear somebody, complaining or saying, you're like, oh, give me a break, right? My life is harder than yours, right? That's how automatically human beings. So that's why we want to stay away from that. And we really want to talk about the hope, what you aspire to, because those aspirational things is what makes people psychologically in their mind open themselves to say, like I also have hopes and aspirations. It's a more positive. Human beings react more to that than to the negative. And then the last thing is you want to end with purpose. Why does this matter right now? Why is this an urgency to get something done right now? Okay, we have the next slide.
Great. And so everybody, Gabby and I are going to go through a rapid fire exercise. We're going to go through 5 steps. Each step will introduce, give a little color, flavor, direction, and then we'll pose a question to which each of you will answer as quickly as you can. Does not have to be perfect, but in the chat. And we'll go through this 5 different times with 5 different exercises. I just want to reassure you, you will have a 1-pager of what these 5 things are, and you will have an opportunity as part of your homework to fine-tune your story and to submit it to us later. But just get ready and participate with us. So let's go to step 1. And this is where we want to start with something that maybe feels simple, but is really powerful, which is who you are. So it's not about labels or explaining your background. It's about starting with a real everyday moment from your life in the US. Something that shows your culture, your community, your routine, a part of your life. So the goal here is connection. Don't tell us about it. Show us. Show us with a vivid moment or memory in the chat. And as you read others' submissions, feel free to react and share what resonates with you.
And I just want to say that to the comments around, the far right hates us. Well, that might be true. Realistically, that group of people is probably less than 10% of the whole entire country. And so let's not give the smallest minority of the loudest voices the most amount of power, right? I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page that yes, there are people that do not want us in the country that would do whatever, right? But the far majority of them are people who do see us, who care about us, that see our humanity. And that's the people we're trying to move, and that's the people that we're trying to activate here. There's just a lot of people that don't know.
Yes, so feel free. We'll give you another moment to share a vivid memory from your life in the US in the chat. Don't be shy. What first comes to mind?
Oh yeah, Pedro, hip hop. I still remember the first ever hip hop song that played when I was in the US. It was Hoop It Is, Hoop It Is. I hear it and then like all the memories come in. Yeah. And Diego, like describe it, right? Like one of the things that I share when I tell my story is that when I moved to the United States, everything looks so much greener. Like the trees, it just everything felt so much brighter. The sun shined very differently in Miami than ever before. So when I tell that part of my story, right, I share that and people laugh and they're like, "Oh yeah." And then they connect to a certain piece. So one of the things that a really good storyteller does is they add color, right? Uh, this is where I did really bad in English. Um, which one is it a verb? Is it, no actions,
An adverb,
description,
adverb.
an adverb. I'm an ESL child, what can I say? An adverb, right? To make sure that you're putting color into what you are sharing with people so that people can like imagine it, that they can start connecting to their own experiences.
We've got memories of kindergarten teacher, first experience on a subway.
Oh, I remember the first time of listening a Michael Jackson song lyrics and learning English and like understanding it and feeling empowering. Like think about what you're just saying, and even as you're reading some of these things, right? The connection that it gives you, that sense of like, oh, that's what we're trying to get to with people. And Gerald, what you're talking about here, getting lost in New York City train system and using my broken English, pointing skills and smiling to figure out how to get home. When I'm reading that, I'm thinking about this saying that I don't necessarily like, right? But it's very much used here in the United States, which is you gotta pull yourself by the bootstraps, right? And thinking about like how as a little kid you got lost, but you found a way to move forward and find your way, like the resiliency, that's what people connect to. That's what people feel like, man, why are we doing this to Daryl? Why are we, allowing for more of these young people who are finding that they have barriers but are finding a way forward? Let's see, let's keep reading some of these. Any other ones, Susan, that you saw that you connected with?
Yeah, it cracked me up. Who was it? It was the un Hondureño who mentioned people didn't understand the country that he was from, so they thought he was from Hungary. That was having to educate people about the world.
And let me tell you, I have been at a KKK rally. I have been in the middle of what you would call a far right anti-immigrant rally here in Washington, D.C., talking to people. And I've shared my story, and I've shared my story with funny stories like this. And it's been more empowering than if I would have been like, oh, like a sad story, right? Like there's something about the human spirit that there's energies, right? And people want to be connected to certain kind of energies. And I'm not telling you that like we have to hide the hardships, the real hardships that we have to go through. But using humor, right, really it's a beautiful way to connect with people.
All right, Gabby, let's thank you everybody. I love just reading about all these moments that you remember in your life and I mean, they're just so universal. And it really places people with you in that moment here in the United States. Let's move on to step 2. And I'm going to put the question that you have to answer in the chat, and I'll share a little background, follow along on the slide. But next we move on to your experience. Many people don't really understand how immigration status affects your everyday life. This step, number 2, is your chance to share one real way your status had limited your opportunities or held you back despite your effort and potential. This isn't about listing everything, but choose one truth that feels important to name. Abby, there's a question here about whether or not you've met Stephen Miller.
Yes. And I'm just answering
Oh.
because I'm like, there's one out there with Mr. Trump too. So for this step 2 of you thinking about it, right? There's some stuff that everyday Americans, believe it or not, right? We live it every single day of our lives. We're surrounded by it, but they don't get, right? And so I recently worked on a deportation detention of Annie Ramos, and I was working with her husband, who is a staff sergeant, and the mom, right, who's a conservative mom, likely voted for Trump. I don't know, I didn't ask, right? But she was all the time appalled and was like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening to her. And I'm like, this happens to millions of people and has been happening to immigrants all across the country. And they just don't know, right? So one thing that I like to share, for example, is that when I was in 10th grade, I took driver's ed class. I omit the fact that I almost ran over the teacher. I was supposed to go on drive and I went on reverse and he was behind the car. We won't share that out loud. But I tell them that, I took the class, I passed the examination despite that. And when I went to the DMV to try to get my driver's license, they wouldn't give it to me because of my status. And they're like, huh? Right. So there's a lot of stuff that limits our opportunities that they just don't know. And it's important to point those things out because, again, right, a lot of these people are sometimes oblivious to it or don't understand, right? And they don't get it because they've had it all, right? That's what privilege is, right? And if people um, don't understand their privilege, it's to them like normal.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of folks name things like the inability to get a job or be eligible for an internship because of status. Getting into college. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one about going to a trip with Key Club, and those are so powerful because every practically school child in America, from either, elementary school, middle school, high school, does a trip, right? And it is really heart-wrenching to hear when you're like, I wanted to go on the school trip, but because of my status, I wasn't able to, right? It touches a chord in individuals' um, hearts because they can connect to it because they know, right? They've seen it in a movie or they've experienced it themselves. And so those, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to get to try to connect uh, to it. And there's right here a picture about mirroring. One of the things that is the most powerful way that you're able to connect and get people to understand and see your story is by mirroring. And how can a person who has been here since the Mayflower, right, or whatever, that doesn't have any idea of it, of what you're going through, if you don't mirror it for them? So being able to connect to them, meeting at people where they're at, like you will never go up to I don't know, a Spanish speaker and talk to them in English and expect them to understand, right? You have to find the language, the form to be able to get people, meet people where they're at so that they can understand. And I want more explanation on the, maybe my team here knows, like SpongeBob. What does that mean? What is this? Yeah. Oh, that's what that was.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to move on to step number 3, which is, what are you hopeful for? And what are you building or pursuing? At this step, we shift to hope, because hope, despite all the challenges and the obstacles that you face, is a critical part of your story. People connect to momentum, they connect to effort, they connect to possibilities and to vision. And this step is about what you're building, what you're fighting for, and what you're working toward, whether that's finishing a degree, building a career, supporting your family, in any way shaping your future. So take a moment and describe in a sentence, what are you hopeful for? What are you building or pursuing?
This is a little bit like putting things in the universe. This is a little bit about visualizing and helping people visualize what it is possible in the future, right? Um, and it's also, I believe that this is a better way to make people feel guilty and get them to take action versus telling them something that their reaction is, well, I cannot pay for school either because my parents are too rich and I don't get financial aid, but it's still really unaffordable for me to like pay for school. You know, like there's a difference between that versus like I'm hopeful for, and I'm gonna go and see, become a useful engineer for autonomous vehicles and provide a safer traffic ecosystem and not allow Gabby to to drive. Just kidding. But you know that is like more powerful, right? Like how many of you, you can put thumbs up, can see that, right? Like the power of being able to project and share, right? What you're hopeful for, what you're trying to achieve, what you're working towards. We're reading some of these as you all are working. Yeah, these are so powerful. Opening my own clinic, becoming a therapist. Therapy helped me process and cope with so much that comes with being a dreamer. Despite obstacles of institution, continue studies, uh, my degree in 2028, I'm hopeful that there will be some sort of path. And Jeanette, I want you to like give me more, right? What are you hope that is a hopeful for the broader community, wait, but what do you want to do? Give me a little bit more about you. Think about what are the goals that you're working towards? What are you building or pursuing? Like name it, right?
I love the aspirations you all have in education and making a mark on the world. Just the motivation to pay it forward is very, it makes me emotional. It's very touching.
Healing the inner child and becoming the professional scared little girl dreams of. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll move to step 4. And this one's a little different. But it's probably one of the most important steps out of the 5-step exercise we're doing. This step isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about turning inward and asking yourself why you believe you are worth fighting for. Advocacy doesn't start with convincing others. It starts with deciding internally that your life, your dreams, your future matter enough to stay in the fight, even in hard times like these. Because when you believe you're worth fighting for, advocacy stops being about asking for permission and becomes about claiming what you already know is true. So share with us in the chat. Why do you believe you're worth fighting for?
And I know this is deep and likely nobody has asked some of these questions of you, but it's really critical and important that you all realize not only that you're deserving, not only that you're worth fighting for, but that, you know, and I'm gonna butcher this, I'm a little scared to say this, but right, Maya Angelou, right, talks about like your crown, and it talks about like people who have already fought and have already struggled for us to be where we're at today. And I think we have to find ways for us to, despite, right, like this, the picture before, right, and the saying, they try to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. We need to stop believing that the value that we have as people and as human beings comes from them and papers, right? Like somebody said, I am human like anyone else. And that's the powerful thing. I had a friend that today was negotiating her pay. And I told her, because she was really nervous, and I said to her, negotiate as if you're negotiating for somebody else. And she's like, oh my gosh, we're so used to always fighting for other people. We don't know how to fight for ourselves. And this question right here is about the realization, right? That this fight is about the inner little you, the professional you, the young person and the person that you want to become, and that we need to be heard, right? And we need to share and tell people what we want, right? A child, and I'm not trying to say we're children and stuff, but a baby doesn't know how to communicate things. But if it's hungry, you better believe it's going to cry and scream for it, right? And so we have to take certain actions to do that. But the first step is us realizing that we are worth fighting for, we're worth getting these things passed by legislation or whoever, right? So that it can unleash our potential, our dreams, and our humanity. These are all just so beautiful.
Yeah, never a right or wrong answer, and your truth is the truth. So thank you all of you for sharing, including the conversation happening between Diego and Gracie. Okay. Thank you so much. We're in our last and final step, which is the ask. It's always the ask at the end of your story because your advocacy always has a purpose. Once someone understands who you are, what you faced, and why you're still fighting, you give them a direction. You give them homework. Your ask will change depending on who you're talking to, of course. It might be asking a policymaker to support the DREAM Act, which you will all get a chance to do multiple times this year as you stick with us, or asking a friend to speak up for you or to show support, or a professor to stand with you. So take a moment, think about what you would ask people in your advocacy, and complete the sentence. After hearing my story, I want people to what? And a clear ask helps turn the connection people feel to you into action. Thank you, Gracie. We'll share the PowerPoint and other resources for sure in an email follow-up, so you'll have access to the slides.
Oh, it's powerful. Quick, simple, to the point. Dream Act now. But yeah, you would think, right, this would be so much easier. And the DREAM Act was first introduced in 2001. It has come up for about many times. Miss Susan Collins in 2010 got arrested outside of the White House on behalf of Dreamers. The work has been, just immense amount of work has happened. And yet here we are again with the belief that we can get this done. But we know we're not going to be able to get this done by ourselves. But we also know that as human beings, we have power, right? And we do have power to, at least within our own communities, influence and get folks to take action. So what we're doing here today is not just the start, but the continuation, right, of it. And it's going to be up to us to figure out how much more we're going to take this.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of comments kind of reflect uh, the intention that folks just see your humanity, that you're human, that you're not what others might want to depict you as or define you as. Somebody mentioned criminals or here to do bad things. It's to set the record straight about who you really are. Yeah. Okay, Chris, let's go on. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in the 5 steps. You will have a chance to kind of take that back and fine tune it and submit it as a single story. We'll get into that later, but now what we'd like to do is share with you. We invited Jimena to join us. She had a conflict that she couldn't move, but she agreed to send a video. You might all know her. She's one of our scholars currently with Purdue. And she was just by sharing very authentically of herself, her hopes, dreams. She got the attention of her community and beyond. Just a very natural storyteller. So she's going to share a little bit here with us her thoughts about what we're covering today, and how the way in which she shared her story made a difference in garnering support for her and her immigration case. So go ahead, Chris. Go ahead and play it.
Hey y'all, my name is Jimena Arias and I am one of the TheDream.Us scholars. Last May, I was detained by ICE after what was later confirmed to be a mistake during a traffic stop. In a matter of moments, my life changed and my story quickly spread across the news. At that time, everything felt overwhelming and uncertain. It's hard to explain what it feels like to suddenly have your life put on pause, to not know what's going to happen next, and to feel like everything you've worked so hard for could be taken away. But in that moment, I knew I had a choice in how I shared my story. I didn't want to be seen only as what happened to me. I wanted people to see who I am beyond that moment. I'm a student, I have goals, I have dreams, and I've called Georgia my home since I was 4. I wanted to remind people that I am just like so many other young people trying to build a future. When I started sharing my story in that way, with honesty, but also with hope, I saw something really powerful happen. People began to connect with me, not just the situation. They saw themselves in me, and that connection is what helped build so much support, not only in my community, but far beyond it. I think what made the difference is that my story didn't come from a place of anger or victimhood, but from a place of truth and resilience. And because of that, it helped change perspectives. It helped people understand that these situations aren't just headlines, they affect real people, real families, and real futures. Sharing my story showed me that storytelling is one of the most powerful tools we have. It can open hearts, shift perspectives, and bring people together in ways that sometimes facts cannot. And for me, it wasn't just about telling what happened, it was about showing who I am and reminding others that our stories truly do matter. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for playing that, Chris. I hope that was helpful and just brings to life a little bit of the recommendations and the guidance that we're sharing with you today. Jimena was not a trained storyteller. She just spoke from the heart. On the day of her arrest, she told the officer, "You can't arrest me. I have finals next week." And you're like, oh, right? Just that simple statement, you could immediately identify with her. We are going to move along here. We're a little bit pressed for time, but I'm going to ask our colleague, Dr. Lee, to take a couple of questions from you all, any burning, really top of mind questions. And I'm sorry that we're not committing as much time to this section as we had hoped, but I promise in the next one we'll give a little more time. Go ahead, Hing. What have you noticed in the Q&A?
So we didn't actually get any questions in the Q&A. There was one question that came in on the chat around, has anyone asked, how can we talk to representatives in red states?
So, like you would anyone else, but remembering what Susan said at the beginning, we don't want you all to just go out there and talk to people without having a plan, especially because we don't know, right, how this person is going to react or not. But we do need to, like, if there's anybody we need to be working with is Republicans. And so you just share, your values. You share exactly what Jimena said. And it really is up to them. One of the things I used to tell people is um, when people would tell me, like, this is not your country or whatever, right? I was like, I'm sorry, but you cannot tell me what's in my heart. And that would shut them out like really quick, right? And so that's the power of you telling your story, that you set the narrative, that you set the tone, and then it's up to them to make a decision, right? If they're going to take action or not.
I think this probably, Susan, is where you're headed next, but I think the this question speaks to how. How do I get my story out?
Right. So I hope that we've shared some sort of tricks and idea as we've walked through this slide deck so far. But Chris, take us to the next action steps, and we'll give you all some concrete things to do as a next step. And I hope it's becoming clear to you all these monthly sessions that we're having. We're hoping to give you some tricks and tools that you can use as we sort of work together to build a force to demand the DREAM Act and make that happen. And so this is all interconnected. We're not expecting us to all become advocacy experts overnight, but we're going to do this in pieces month by month. And we will guide you through an experience of being able to use your stories in both quiet, anonymous, personal, and advocacy ways to affect change. So next action steps. So if we walk through the 5 steps, thank you to the colleague who shared the one pager, which captures what the 5 steps are. Of course, we're going to share the slides as well, so you'll see them there. But we want you to fine tune the story that you worked on very quickly today and submit it for us. Your stories really strengthen us as a team, but more importantly, it teaches us what a difference we're making in your lives and the way in which you change the world. And so we like to collect your stories. So please use the one pager, look at the slides again, and then the link in the chat and also in the follow-up email, you'll be able to submit that by filling in a quick form that will create sort of a single paragraph short story for you. So please do that for us. It'll give you a little practice and build on the next step. Next slide. Okay, Gabby is going to take this away to say some final words, walk through last slides, and wrap us up.
Yeah. So this is just really key takeaways. Repetition works. So it's not enough to tell your story just once. You have to do it until it starts clicking in people's mind. And really quickly on the back to the red states and talking to conservative, the idea is you're not going to change their mind in one moment. It is to start planting a seed. It is so that when they are making decisions, they remember you. And it's hard for them to make bad decisions, right? So this is what we're trying to do. But we want to, again, details to build connection. We understand and know that hope is not optional. It is a strategy. As Jimena said, this is not about victimhood. You are not a victim of your story. You are the author. And the last thing is that we're not statistics. We are storytellers shaping this country. And if we do not define who we are, guess what? Others will do it for us. And others have been doing it for far too long. And it's time to gain back and get a hold of our own narrative and story. So what's next, right? What are we going to do is in June, we are going to have a mock DreamAc or Dreamer graduation. But between those dates, we are going to start activating employers. We're going to start activating our friends and family. If we go to church, right? If we're part of groups and organizations, we're going to start tapping into the people, our principal, if we had like, or a teacher back in the day, right? And say, look, I'm still here. Because of you, I was able to get to where I am today, but now I need your help. I need your voice. We're going to start figuring ways, and we're going to be sending more information on how we're going to do that. And our goal is really to get to what is August recess. We want to start setting meetings with members of Congress, with people in leadership, people in power, because what we're seeing, right, and it's going to take a little bit, is that there is going to be hopefully an opportunity right before the elections, the midterm elections, for them to deliver, right? And we're using this opportunity, this situation of some sort of need, right, by Republicans and Donald Trump to stay in power, for us to say, well, here you go. Here's something that you have to deliver, right? This is, yes, opportunistic. Yes, we may have a conversation around politics and how do we go about it. But reality is that we are going to um, make a bet and do something about this, and we're just not going to wait for it to come. We're going to create the conditions in order for it to be make it so uncomfortable, right, for those leaders, for the people, for this country to like not be able to ignore us anymore. So this is step 2, right? You learned about the Dream Act. This is storytelling. We're going to continue this. We're going to start collecting stories. And we're going to start finding ways to connect with all of you. And yes, ask you all, right, when the time is right, how you want to tell your story, meet you at where you're at, and then start activating you and your community to make that big change that we're hoping to get done this year. Gracie's like, he's getting desperate. Yes, we believe so. What's the last slide, Chris, I think?
It's a
Oh,
it's a
it's a quote, yeah.
there's a quote right here.
Perfect. Yeah. So thank you all so much. We made it at time. I know there's still burning questions. All of you are like, I'm ready. Let's go. But, please start working on your stories. Submit it. We're going to be in contact.
We will have a session in May, and I apologize, we haven't calendared it. It's a very busy time for scholars, especially with finals and graduations, but we will give you plenty of time with a save the date via email to mark your calendars and to join us then. The plan is to engage around how to visit with your member of Congress, how to engage your elected representatives, and learn a little bit more about how a congressional office operates, just in time for, some visits later in the year. So stay tuned for that. We'll send out a date. Hope you can join us, and just thank you so much for being here this evening and answering the different 5 prompts and sharing your stories. Yeah, I'm taking them straight to my heart, and you all keep me going in the work. So thank you and have a good evening.